Good morning, fish keepers. Cam here from the fishroom.co.nz, and let's pat ourselves on the back. We've done it again. We've made it to Friday. Congratulations, everybody. Let's have a coffee. Good coffee today. Just got a very, very quick amount of admin to run through before we bring on our special guest. We are moving this weekend. So as of Monday, we'll be in a new premise. We're literally moving next door. So currently we're at 10B Couture Place in Stoke. We're going to be moving to 8B Couture Place in Stoke. It's a big black building, so it's nice and easy to get to us. Second of all, obviously, as Brian just touched on, Nelson itself is in a state of emergency. There is some pretty significant flooding happening at the moment. Nothing has affected the shop or anything like that, but it's probably a good recommendation not to come in, not to do shopping unless you really have to. We do offer free shipping on the website for most products, so if you are in Nelson, you don't really want to come out and congest those roads anymore, we can chuck on the courier who's already out and about anyway and get it delivered to you for free. And with that, we've also got the 20% moving sale going on until the end of Sunday. So yeah, just fill your boots while you still can. That is literally all of the admin that I've got. So I'd like to introduce our guest. We've got John with us today, and we have Pete Barnes, who is a Lake Malawi underwater fishing photographer expert. Are those some nice words to use?
I wouldn't say expert.
Thank you very much for joining us. It's really appreciated. I know it's fairly late over where you are, so it's great to have you with us. So thank you.
Thanks.
Yeah. So the first question I just want to know is, we sort of ask everybody, is what got you into fish keeping? Sort of how long have you been doing it for, and how did your journey into the hobby start?
It's fragmented because it started as a young kid in the local river catching just local species. It was stickleback. It was the main ones we used to catch, which in breeding dress, the male has a bright red belly on it, basically. I think the attraction, we used to catch them in little fishing nets, put them into jars to look at them at the end, or a bucket, and at the end of the day, or in the afternoon, put them back in. It was just that sort of thing fascinated me. Then when I started school, we had an aquarium in the school, which had guppies and neon tetras, only a small aquarium, but so I enjoyed watching that because of the colours, but never really got to do anything with it because it wasn't for the children to touch or do anything with. It was an adult or the caretaker looked after it. And so I'd always had an interest in nature, but it went more into birds later on. I did a lot of bird watching. And I just happened to be working in Brighton on the south coast of England, went into a record shop, and next door was another shop, just a blue front. I poked my head in the door to see what it was, and it was a marine store. Wow. I went in and asked the guy lots of questions because it just seemed really interested. Came back home, told my wife about what I'd seen, and that Christmas she bought me my first tank, a little 60-litre aquarium, which we just started off with general things like, they say, like neons or whatever else, and a few swordtails at times. But within a year, I'd seen Lake Malawi cichlids, and I was hooked, and that's how I got into it. So from then on, it was my daughter had the little tank, and I got myself a bigger tank and started keeping mbuna, the Lake Malawi rock cichlids.
Yeah, nice one.
That's how I got into it.
Yeah, must be a journey. So the world's got over 1,700 different species of cichlids. What is it about Malawi cichlids that intrigues you?
I think it's a mixture of the colours, behaviour, and the diversity, because there's so many different species, although some species look very similar, and there's lots of blue and black barred fish as well, but there are so many different species there, and the different feeding techniques. Another thing that's what I like to see in the lake, what I often video, is their feeding techniques, because you have some fish comb the algae on the rocks. Some pick at it, picking little organisms out of it. Some actually grab, twist, and rip off bits of algae or whatever. And there are other fish that feed a different way, feed at different angles. You have metroclima feed almost straight down onto the rocks, open their mouth wide, whereas other fish feed at different angles. And you also have, where some fish are not very clean feeders, the ones that pick and rip or whatever, other fish often around them picking up the pieces that they drop. That's just within the mbuna themselves. And you have other species like we call them haps, the larger fish, the sand sifters and that, and they have what's known as the blue follower. Some of these species go on digging in the sand of the substrate, and other fish like Certicara mori, the blue dolphin, they follow along behind, picking up anything else which has been disturbed by these fish that are foraging in the substrate. So you see lots of different interactions.
Wow.
And you can see this happening in the lake, but you can also see interactions between other species just around a certain area. You'll have a dominant male of one species defending a rock against all other males of that species, and yet other fish can come and feed in and around it, and it's not bothered at all. But you can have another species which just defends an area, and that's it. Nothing else is allowed in there, like an algae guy that defends its feeding area.
Wow.
So it's just those different things that you can see, and that's what I like to see, feeding techniques, how they interact, because you see a little bit of it in the aquarium, but you won't see it as it is in the lake, because obviously the size of the lake is huge.
Yeah. Wow, that sounds so, like, I knew a lot of that, but I didn't know some of the fish that sort of hang around afterwards and cleaning up after them and all that kind of behavior.
Well, they actually follow them. As stuff is disturbed by one, you get one fish will bury its head in the sand disturbing it, and like the Certicara mori is one of the followers, that will just pick up anything else it disturbs.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's amazing. Cool. Excellent.
It's a fascinating ecosystem to watch then. Fascinating.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah. So when did you start keeping Malawis yourself? You've touched on obviously how.
I actually, it's actually about 30 years ago. So I already had young children by the time. So I'd gone from seeing them at school as a 5-6-year-old up to about 10, and then not having nothing to do with them for about 20 years before then getting the aquarium again, and then getting into Malawi cichlids. So about 30, just over 30 years, I think I've been keeping.
Yeah. Wow.
Malawi. Yeah.
Cool.
But it was sorry, cool.
No, keep going.
I was going to say, it was just the reason I got to go there was because I went to a talk by Ed Cummings in the UK, and the chap talking to him about diving, or about the photographs and everything else, and he actually invited me on the safari that year to dive with his group, but I wasn't able to go. But luckily, he gave my details to somebody else, and I went the next year. There was only a chance meeting with him that he said, "You can come along, you can do this," because I just thought it was reserved for biologists and that sort of thing, because actually it was the biologists' reports and papers and everything else. I didn't realise that just a hobbyist could go along and do it as well.
It's funny, I had the same kind of understanding for South American trips, when people would go on expeditions, and I just thought that was untouchable to the everyday aquarist. But I was blown away when I discovered that there was actually tour companies and everything, and it's given me a goal. Had you dived prior to going to Lake Malawi? Was that a hobby?
I've been on holiday and done try dives where they teach you and take you out for a little dive under supervision. I've done that a couple of times, but it was talking to Ed. The reason I couldn't go with him that year because I wasn't qualified, and I said it's going to take me too long to get the money together and qualify to go that year. So what I did was that year I qualified and then spent a year doing a few other diving courses and getting used to diving, getting buoyancy right, because that's one of the main things you need is to get your buoyancy right to stop you disturbing the silt which is on the bottom of the lake in a lot of places.
I can imagine.
Just going to give me 30 seconds. Curious has got something at the door. I'm really sorry.
So really, I mean, it's interesting, and it just shows the dedication that you have. That you wanted to do it. You actually had to go qualify first. That's not an easy feat. I mean, it's time consuming. You've costly.
I was going to say, although you don't have to dive, you can snorkel, because on the trips I go on, if somebody wants to snorkel, then the trip is tailored to suit them as well. So you're not just going to reefs where it's 5-6 meters down to the top of the rocks before you start. Well, there might be an odd one or two like that, but the other times you can snorkel. A lot of times there's shallow areas where you will see quite a few fish. You would be a much better experience diving, but for snorkeling you still see a good number of fish and see some of the interactions as well.
Well, that's really good. That's good. I must admit, it's something I'm very jealous of. very, very jealous. And I think a lot of people watching tonight will be jealous as well.
Anybody can do. That's the thing. Anybody can do it. It's open to anyone. Every year, Larry Johnson puts up a Facebook page event for it, and lots of people message me, ask me about it. So I'm really interested, and then don't do anything about it. I know some of them obviously can't yet. They've got young children, haven't got the money or whatever. But
yeah,
it's something that anybody can do. It's not a privileged thing for certain people and get invited. It's open to anybody.
Yeah, I mean, just out of interest, also, you've been in the, what kind of price range? What's the cost of an average trip over there? And how long are you over for?
The cost of the trip, we go over there. The actual safari itself is about 2 weeks, so 14 days. You dive on, I think it's 11 days of that, because you can't dive before and after flying.
Yeah.
So you've got to have a day either side of that. And once you're there, if you land in Malawi, your transport, accommodation, most of your food, odd snacks you buy yourself and drinks you buy yourself, but all the other accommodation, everything else is provided there. Transport as well, but you're on the boat most of the time, going up or down the lake, wherever you want to go to. The cost of that is just over $2,000 US. So it is, but when you compare that to the cost of diving in the UK, if you pay X amount to go out on a boat trip or whatever in the UK, it's pretty much not far off of that anyway. The extras you have to pay your own flights there and back. That's not part of it. You book and pay for your own flights, but the rest of it,
that's over and above the 2,000.
That is, yeah.
Okay.
The flights, UK prices are about £550 to £600, depending on where you go, who you fly with.
That seems quite reasonable for what you get from it.
I think it is. When I compare it to what I paid for diving when I was training and just going out on some boat dives, I'm thinking, well, I'm getting 19, 20 dives, sometimes more, depending what happens. But I actually go out a little bit earlier, go out 5 days earlier and stay in Senga Bay overlooking Namalenji Island, a place called Port Runnings. But that's because the first year I went there, I was straight off the plane, straight to Red Zebra, where it's all based from, in Senga Bay. And I think I was a bit tired from the flight and overawed by it all as well. It took me a few days to get acclimatized. So now I got there earlier, get used to the change out there, the pace of life, because it's so much slower anyway. And also get there for a few days, have a dive at Namalenji, if we're lucky, before the safari actually starts. So about 5 days early. You get a chance just to relax and also see some of the local sites. There's a fishing village 500 meters away, which is getting bigger and bigger all the time. So there's more and more boats, more fish. Yeah. So.
Do you find the locals in the areas that you visit are welcoming to?
Yeah,
I know it's for them, but
the only thing I've felt there is trying to be pressurised into buying something or helping somebody, because they come up to you, they're willing to show you anything, show you around, take you through to somewhere you don't know about. And what it normally is, come and see my uncle's paintings, or come here and look at this. They then try and work it around that way to get you to try and buy some gifts or something from one of their relatives. But if I've been
so much like most holidays,
it's not a problem.
Not much different.
But what I often say is, I'll have a look, but doesn't mean I'm going to buy. So and if they're happy with that, then that's fine. Yeah. But no, I've never felt pressurised. Nobody's ever. I've not felt unsafe at all. Malawi is called the warm heart of Africa, and I think that's reflected in the people. They're very welcoming.
Yeah, I mean, I think that part of Africa has got, and it always has had, a warm relationship with the UK. From back, if you go right back to David Livingstone and things. They seem to have a really strong connection with the UK.
Yeah, I think they do. Yeah.
But anyway, Cam, I'll let you get back to the questions. Sorry about that, mate.
No, that was fantastic. So at what point did the underwater photography and videography come into what you were doing?
It started as soon as I started diving, because I knew that I wanted to go to Malawi and take photos. But I started off with a little point and shoot and Tova point and shoot camera and a GoPro Hero 3 Plus Black. That's my first trip in 2014, and I actually went there thinking I was going to be taking lots more photos, and ended up did lots more video. And on Facebook, I seem to get known more for the videos, because the photos weren't of such good quality. As you got most of the guys who've been going some time go with DSLRs of underwater houses, so you're looking at £5,000–6,000 worth of equipment, taking photos. But there wasn't so many videos out there, whereas people wanted to see the videos because it showed the interactions or the fish's more natural behaviour compared to just a photo. I mean, the photos are brilliant, but
Well, the thing is, you can get stills from your video. So you get, if you take video, you get the best of both.
I've done that sometimes.
So you obviously mentioned that you were more people began to notice your videos and stuff like that.
Yeah, it's only when I started posting on Facebook, because I've obviously I started posting up photos and videos, and people started sharing. People who knew I was going, and started sharing, and I think it just seemed to gradually increase, and start going all around the world. So it surprised me just how popular Lake Malawi cichlids were, because of the number of people.
Have you got any videos or photos that you would be able to share with us while we're in this chat, something like that for us?
Can do. Do you want to do some now?
Yeah, please. Yeah, that'd be fantastic.
Don't mind me sharing all.
Just do what you need to do, Pete.
Yeah, I'm sure there's plenty of people that'd love to see some.
Yeah. Let's start off with this. This is where we stay at Cool Runnings in Senga Bay. This is Namalenji Island. This is a view from the gate onto the beach.
Wow.
Accommodation. This is about 6 o'clock in the morning, just after 6. These people are walking from nearby villages to go to the fishing village, which is just to the left of the screen. They go there to buy the fish as they come in, fresh off the boat, if you like, and it's a hive of activity. You hear the people, the murmur of voices before you even come out the bedroom. That's how you know it's time to get up, because you can hear people talking and muttering as they walk along the shoreline, going for the fish. So Namalenji, say if we get a chance to dive at Namalenji, and I think Namalenji is best known for this fish, Protomelas taeniolatus, the red empress.
Yeah.
But the Namalenji isn't deep. The deepest point here is about 7 meters.
Yeah.
And it's basically just a rocky island with a few rocks around, scattered about as well, close by. And you see these very easily in crevices like this, or feeding around isolated rocks. They don't seem too territorial. I've seen a few sort of defending territories, but nothing aggressive at all. There's also surprising because you don't expect what we call a hat to be feeding off the rocks. You expect that to be an mbuna. But these are picking bits and pieces. That's a female behind as well. So.
Cool. All right.
Sorry, I'll come out of that for a minute so I can see you again.
Yeah, cool. That was absolutely stunning photo. Absolutely stunning.
Yeah, sorry.
So now that you've experienced like the underwater side of Lake Malawi cichlids, is it significantly different to how you expected, or was it kind of on par, or did it just blow you away, sort of thing?
Yeah, it did. It did a few things when I first went there, because you read books, you learn, you go on forums and you talk to people, and you think you've got a fair bit of knowledge. And I thought I was middle of knowledge, general knowledge on everything. When I got out, I thought, I don't know half of what's out. I'm way down the bottom. It just makes you realise just how many different things are there, how many things you had in your head, you perceived in your head, are totally different to what you actually see.
Yeah.
I mean, it's the environment is different, because you think of it as, I thought of it as just being rocks here and that, and you go there and it's not just rocks. There's so many different types of rocks, different shapes. Some are covered in algae, some are covered in sediment, and you have some places like Taiwanese Reef, which is huge rocks, 6 to 10 meters across, some bigger than that, just dropping down right down to the. I'm not sure how deep Taiwanese Reef is. I've been down to about 25 meters on it, and there's a long way to go still there.
Yeah.
And then you go to other places which are like Namalenji or Mara rocks, are 6-7 meters underwater. Sometimes lovely visibility, sometimes not. Yeah, it's. Can I show you some more photos and videos?
Yeah, fire away.
If you don't mind,
Yeah,
if I go on.
Yeah, feel free to put any videos or photos on.
Yeah, I was going to go to a different point on the thing, but I'll go to this bit here. Here we go. So as I said, this is Ababi Island, which is part of the Mbenji Island groups, and here you've got these rocks just straight up out of the water and carry on down below the surface, almost just vertical, and you have fish feeding off of these. Other places you'll have a jumble of rocks, something like this, and as I mentioned before, with some of the reefs are huge with huge rocks. And people ask me for photos like this just to try and recreate the landscapes in the aquarium, but you need a big aquarium to create any of these landscapes.
I don't think your photos are changing while it's on the screen. So I think if I push this, and you might be able to change your photo, and we'll have to bring it back on each time, I think.
Okay, hang on a minute.
Didn't appear to be changing.
Right, what have you got on? What did you have on there to begin with?
We just had the vertical rocks that you were talking about.
Didn't move on from there.
Oh, okay, cool. No worries. Yep. Sorry, I thought you'd begun talking about a different part.
Oh no, did it move on from the vertical rocks onto another set of rocks?
I thought you had, but yeah.
Right, okay, I'll go back in and because I just wanted to show you a bit more about the questions people ask for. So I'll go into here. Do you see the Lorna Cara now?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yeah. Well, so this is the Lorna Cara Stuart Grante. This is over a sandy substrate. And people seem to think that there's sand everywhere in Lake Malawi. This is sand, but it's not always the case.
Yeah.
Hopefully, I've moved on to the next picture now. You can see the same species. This is at the same location, but now
we've stayed on that. So I'll do that, and then if you change the picture you want to bring up, we'll see if we can bring it back on.
Oh, is it stopping all the time? Is it?
Yeah.
Okay, I'll just.
That was some phenomenal colours on that.
Yeah.
That was gorgeous.
Sorry, I have to keep coming out and changing the screen then, won't I?
Yes, exactly.
Do you see the next fish now?
We do now, yep.
Yeah. So this is the same species at the same location, but now you've got a gravel substrate instead. This can only be 2 or 3 meters away from the sandy substrate.
Wow.
As before.
Yep.
Now, for me, it's moved on. Has it moved on for you?
No.
Right. Okay. Glitch through this set. Okay. I'll come out. Same again. Come back out again. Sorry about this.
That's right.
All right.
I saw on Facebook that you posted the other day some samples of the substrate that. Oh, sorry, a few years ago you just recently reposted it. Yeah, that blew me away. The difference in them.
Yeah, I think that was the one. From what I remember, it was that was an open area of sand.
Yeah.
And there was a Lethrinops nest just to the right because people ask for different areas, so I take samples from different areas. Sometimes it's clear, sometimes it's covered in silt.
Mm-hmm.
I'll go see if I can go back in again to this thing. You should now see plants.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, this is Vallisneria. I'm not sure which species, but this again is at the same location as the previous two.
Wow.
Previous two photos. So again, within an area, you can have sand, gravel, or gravel and plants.
Wow.
So when people want to try and recreate somewhere, it's not always.
Yeah.
The same. Do you see a video playing now, or was it not working?
No, we're frozen again, so we're off again. So how many sort of species of plants, or how often do you see plants in Malawi? Is it common, or more common than people think?
It depends where you dive. There are some places where you see it, where you do see it, and others you don't. There's a place called Chofu, which is on the east side. There's just off the shore there. There's plants. It's Vallisneria is the one I see most, but it's not common. I mean, the first year I dived, I didn't see any at all.
Mm-hmm.
But just because of where we dived, it depends where you dived. I did see somebody post on Facebook a couple of years ago when somebody said about plants. No, there's no plants in Lake Malawi. I dived at a certain place and I never saw any plants. When you dive one place, I dived something like 15 places in the first year and never saw any. But then after that, I did see them. So yeah, it just varies. You get some reedy edges. You get fellas near. I can't remember what the other plants are, but yeah, there are plants there. There's also floating islands, which I haven't seen, which basically are where vegetation breaks away and then it's just like a raft.
Mm-hmm.
It's more in the southern areas of the lake.
Yeah.
Right.
Wow.
Yeah. Can I just show you a video?
Yeah, of course.
Absolutely.
Just a shame that it's not working how I want it to work, but
Yeah.
Oh,
right.
Got technology.
Yeah, let's go from here. Hopefully you should see a video now.
just a black screen at the moment.
It's not working. Okay.
No, unfortunately.
I think afterwards, what we can do is gather up the presentation or something, you know, and we can put out a couple of posts to share what you've got. Because they're definitely worth sharing. It's a shame we can't see it just now.
Yeah, as it worked all right to begin with. Now it seems to be playing around a little bit. So no. But basically, what it was, I was trying to show you there was a Malawi blue crab, because lots of people think it's sand, and I have to say it's not sand, it's sediment, and the sediment can be a light dusting to 3 foot deep in places, possibly more deeper down. And basically, it was this crab scuttling across the sediment and then burying itself actually in this silt, which is there. Wow. And you can see the sediment floating around it, and that's the sediment which we have to be careful of when you're diving, because if you're too close to the bottom and you move your fins, you can disturb the sediment, and that's when you get all these particles coming across in front of the camera. And
that's something that when a previous guest, Ivan McColgy, he was in when he first started doing the dives, he had to be careful about he's river, he dives in rivers, although it's slightly different, but you know, upstream and downstream, and it didn't take him long to realize that if you're facing the wrong way in a river, all your shots are just going to be covered in sediment. So it's the same kind of thing, isn't it?
Another thing is when you're taking photos is the direction of the light as well, because I've done it because of you lose red light the deeper you go. I have a red filter on the GoPro, and I've made the mistake of turning the GoPro into the sun and everything just goes orange. And sometimes it can correct straight away, and other times it can go for a minute with just an orange cast all the way across it. And I only do basic editing in a GoPro studio, so I can't do too much with it myself, because it's only basic. I'm not that technically minded to go into something, I don't know, something like the Photoshop, anything like that with video to correct stuff. So mine is just basically try and get the color right, a little bit of contrast or whatever to bring that in, and that's basically it. So.
Just try and get it right first time to avoid having to edit at all.
Yeah. I do get frustrated sometimes. I think I want to do this and I can't. The program I've got doesn't do it, but I look at other things and thinking, I don't think I could deal with that.
As long as you've got the files there, you can eventually get around to it.
Yeah.
Now that you've been in the waters of Malawi, has it changed the way, and like you've seen how the interactions and everything works? Has it changed the way you keep fish in your own home? Has it changed the mindset or the what you actually actively do?
It's made me realise why people have problems with Lake Malawi, especially mbuna, because of the territories. Because you can mbuna in the UK, the standard size to start with is about 4 foot in length. So what we talk about 120. If it's 4 foot by, I don't know, 15 inches, or I don't know. Do you use metric or imperial where you are?
We're on generally centimeters, but a lot of people still use inches.
Yeah. And
4x2 kind of thing.
Yeah. And once you go to the lake and you realise that isn't even the size of one male's territory, he will defend a metre either all around him. So if you've got a rock here and a rock 2 meters to your right, you'll have a male defending one and a male defending the other, and they'll come to the middle and sort of defend their territory. So you can understand why in the aquarium that there are problems. And what I do is I've got a lot of experience that keepers have done in the past as well, and I've followed their advice before I even went to Malawi, was instead of having a rocked out tank, which gives lots of hiding spaces, it also creates one large territory for a male. So if you have 2 or 3 rocks spaced with nothing else around them, so that gives one male a rock here to use as a territory, another male one here, you might get one in the middle, but also the rocks break up the line of sight, so at least other fish can get out of sight of the male depending on his territory here or this side.
Yeah, true.
But people say, oh, but it gives females places to hide, but the females don't hide. You'll see groups of females together in the lake. They'll form small groups and all holding females. They're normally very close to the bottom as well. So I'm wondering, my assumption is that they are picking up tiny bits of plankton. So when people say female mbuna or Lake Malawi cichlids don't eat for 4 weeks or 3 weeks while they're carrying, they do eat. I've had most of mine, or in fact all of mine that I keep, eat when they're holding tiny little bits of flake. But in the lake, I'm pretty certain they're picking up plankton, which is why they're close to the bottom, or they're sat just above a ridge, so the upcurrent will bring stuff up to them.
Yeah, wow. Yeah. Just on that note, you said, the females sort of associate with themselves. Do you see a lot of interspecies sort of associating with each other, or is it very one species, one group, one species, one group type of thing in the lake?
You'll see mixed groups of fish together feeding, especially if there's something there for them to feed on.
Yeah.
But it's an awkward one because you'll get somewhere like Nakatenda Island, you'll just get hundreds and hundreds of Metroclima parsonotus. You'll be swimming along and you'll look behind you, there could be 200 fish following you. Most of them are females or coloured down males, but there'll be other fish do interact. I've seen different species fighting over territory, which you wouldn't expect because you think males are the same species, they'll defend it. But when you see 2 different species fighting, you think, no, that's a bit strange, but it does happen in the aquarium as well. So I suppose it's not so strange when you look at it that way. But in the aquarium, obviously they're forced together, whereas in the lake they've got a huge area. But no, females, the groups of females are the same species together.
You've obviously visited several locations around the lake.
About 80 of them, I think. No, 50 of them. 50 of them. And done about 80 something dives, about 100 hours underwater. Yeah.
That's impressive.
So between sort of one spot to another, there's obviously fish that will associate in one area and then only another area type thing. Do you see a lot of crossover between sort of areas or regions where a fish will just predominantly stay, and then you see a lot of them sort of moving around, or is it we're in this bay, that's all we kind of do sort of thing?
Territorial males will stay and hold their territory. Other fish will just move around, can go wherever they want, basically. If a male hasn't got a territory, he's either going to be looking for a territory or he's just swimming through on the off chance that there's going to be a female who's going to be interested in him. He might be able to nip in, because what happens is with mbuna is that it's the male defends a territory and it's the female swim through his territory and they decide if they want to mate with him or not. If they're interested in his display or whatever, then they'll come down to him. They might not mate, they might do. But sometimes another male would come and try and nip in and try and take advantage at the same time. Generally it's the dominant males will hold a territory and stay there, and the other fish will just move around the area.
What Cam was kind of angling at there was that you have certain species for a particular bay or an island. Is it common or is it unheard of that certain species from a particular bay are found randomly at the other, around the other side? Or
there's what you get is you'll have same species but at different locations. You don't get, there's very little movement, especially with the mbuna, the rockfish. There's very little movement from an area because big open areas between. If you've got a rocky area and then you've got a big open area of sand across a bay or something like that, it's the area that most of the mbuna wouldn't go into because chances of predation. But there are a couple of, because I've had a couple of photos of fish which I'm questioning why is this fish here? And one of the biologists said, oh, that could have moved from a local population. It could have done this. So there is evidence that they do it, although most of them stay basically where they are. But yeah, say there's the same species which could be found some species can be found a long way around the lake at different colour variations at different locations. Obviously, where in the past the lake levels dropped, so all these species were together. As the lake levels risen, species have gone off into different areas, and the levels stayed high for a long time. And so over time, then some of these fish become different species because they develop different feeding techniques and they don't recognise females of what was their species when the lake shrank again, if you like, through drought periods or whatever.
Yeah.
So you've got some species which are just widespread, and others, such as Chindongo solossi, which is a critically endangered one we've been releasing back on the reef for the last few years, back on Taiwanese reef, as part of a captive breeding program. They are just only found there. They're endemic to Taiwanese reef, and that you'll have other fish which, say, can have a very wide distribution. So you get some species only found here or 2 or 3 locations, and you'll also get some species that look so similar at one location, but somewhere else they're classed as a different species, and some minute differences between them. Some of it comes down, I think, to dentation and fin ray counts and that sort of stuff, which over my head, definitely.
Yeah, that's when you need the microscope in the laboratory to decide whether or not they're the same fish. Yeah.
Do you think the slight colour variations from when they've moved sort of locations comes down to what they're feeding, or they've spawned with something else slightly differently, or
there's different things for that? Because speaking to one biologist, because we talk about hybridization, because it was 1 or 2 ancestors that colonized Lake Malawi, and over time, obviously, with more fish coming in, they interbred. So in the past, yes, there was hybridization. And because I questioned a biologist about this, and he said, but we're now finding out that there's hybridization in almost all animal life. He said it's not just the fish of Lake Malawi and that sort of thing. All animal life has had some hybridization. We ourselves have got other DNA within our body, Neanderthal DNA within our body, through interbreeding in the past. But it's some of it may be because of that sort of thing, where in the past different ancestors, different colours of interbred. Some of it may be because there's another fish there of a similar colour or something like that, similar shape, so they've had to evolve to be a different colour for mate recognition or whatever. Although there's other research that these fish, when the male displays shimmies his body to the female, he's producing electrical pulses, which in the laboratory has been found that females recognise, even though the fish look very similar, females recognise electrical pulses from their own male. So it doesn't always happen, because they have to do photographs of hybrids in the lake, and I took a photograph that I sent to Ed Collins, one of the experts on Lake Malawi, and he seemed to think it was a hybrid.
Yeah.
But Tumbly West Island again is different because lots of fish were introduced there. There was an exporter in the area, and he was, for some reason, he had to get out of Malawi. He was only given 24 or 48 hours to get out of Malawi. So he had his ponds full of fish, and rather than leave them in the ponds, he decided to release them into the lake. And the closest point to him was just in front of Tumbly West Island, which is Mitandi. It's rocks which are sometimes covered, sometimes not. And I think that's where he released them, and then spread to Tumbly West Island, which is a few hundred meters away. And so you've got fish from halfway up the lake are found in there, and that's part of the national park, which is supposed to be protected as well. So,
do you think that obviously fish species hybridize, which is a common thing? Do you think that the offspring or the fry that grow up, there's always potential problems with hybrid fry? Do you think they successfully go on to breed again, or because they're hybrids, do you think the true forms back away from them?
My view on it is that it's possible it could happen, but it's going to be extremely rare, because these fish produce 20, 30 fry for every brood. And what it needs is, if you accept that only half the females breed, they only need a few fry to survive from. If they have 10 broods their lifetime, that's 300 fry. They only need a few of those to survive from their whole lifetime to maintain that population. So the chance of hybrid offspring being able to survive, making it through to maturity, being able to attract a mate and breed successfully, and those fry then be raised to adulthood to carry on the genes, has got to be extremely rare, I would have thought.
Mm-hmm.
The problem is that we look at it from the aquarium side, where we've got 30 fry, and survival rate of that is almost 100%. So in the lake, it's totally different because there's so much predation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that kind of was going to lead on to my question, was very similar. At what point does a hybridized fish become a population of a fish and then a scientifically described animal? You know, how many does it take, or how many generations? So,
but then species is a man-made term, isn't it? So it's
true.
Basically, what it is, the biologists agree that yes, this is more. It's enough differences from closely related species to be classed as a separate species.
Yeah,
and they still debate that sometimes. Some will agree and some won't.
Mm-hmm. So, a variation doesn't necessarily mean a new species.
No,
because you look at English people or Scottish people, but somebody that lives in London is almost like another species to somebody that lives in Newcastle.
Yeah.
So, but they're still technically, the same. So they're just variants.
Yeah.
I get that. Yeah.
I think when I sort of think of like my favorite Malawi cichlids or some of my preferred ones, like the bumblebee cichlid is up there for me. I just like the shape, the aquarium shape, the behavior, the color, and all that kind of stuff. And my general idea of them in the wild is they're around sort of large clusters of rocks and that sort of stuff.
What they actually are is they pick parasites off of one of the catfish, the Bagrus. So if I can pronounce it, Marion. No, I can't remember the name. It's locally known as Campango. It's a large catfish over a meter long that they like to catch for food. And basically, the Pseudotrophus crabra, the bumblebee, picks parasites off the fish's body. But also, it's been scientific research has shown some of its stomach contents contain the eggs or young of the catfish as well. So it acts as a clean refuge, but it also takes the opportunity to take some of the young or eggs at the same time if it gets the chance.
Wow.
Yeah. But when, as a diver, when you're diving, because most of us wear black suits, you'll find that they're very attractive because they think you're a big black catfish. I've been trying to film something, felt something on my leg, like a little pinch on my leg, and I looked around, there's been a crab picking at my leg. He's obviously seen something on my suit, a little speck or something. He thinks it's a parasite, he's trying to pick it off.
That's pretty cool. So the Lake Malawi's got its own cleaner fish, just like
It's also got other species. You have species that feed off the scales and fins.
Oh, like the piranha do. Piranha do that,
The Chromismento is an mbuna that does that. What it does, you often see it when you've got two males circling each other and fighting. They're too busy lip locking or circling, and this other fish will sneak in, and as the fish comes and turns its body, it will grip onto the side. And it's sort of, as the fish turns away, it just allows the bond biting just to grip the scales, and the turning of the fish just tears the scales away from itself.
I guess need to see.
And the first one I saw was I was watching an Olnacara, and all of a sudden this fish darted out from under the rock, hit the Olnacara, went back under the rock, and the Olnacara was like delayed reactions. What was that? Didn't do anything, and then just swam away. So,
all these things you just don't know, you just don't see in the aquarium.
Well, if we're talking about favourite fishes, Cam, I've got one as well, and this is when I kept Malawi cichlids maybe 20 years ago now. The first one that I successfully bred and ended up becoming overrun with them was the Astrotilapia calyptera the one with the Eastern Happy, I think it gets called locally.
There's so many different. I don't know many trade names. I just go for the scientific name most of the time. You can communicate around the world with people.
I fell in love with the dominant male with the dark blue or
I
dark.
had them years ago, and red in the fins as well.
Yeah, gorgeous fish.
Yeah.
Absolutely stunning. Is that
Yeah.
something that you've come across in your travels?
I've seen the variant which is found at Chisholmulu, which is a slightly different variant. It's a bluey tinge to it. So it's
Right, okay.
different. Yeah. I've not seen it clear. I've not seen dominant males. I've seen females and juveniles, but I've not seen dominant males. Yeah.
Okay.
But it's surprising because there's so many fish that you don't see, which are common, and other fish you can see which aren't so common. It's just depending on where you go, how you dive, and luck really, because you can be diving in one spot. Another diver could be 2 meters, 3 meters to your right, just looking the other side of the rock, and they can see something totally different to you. You'll come up after dive. Did you see so and so? No. Where was that? There. Yeah,
when you plan your dives.
Sorry.
When you plan your dives, do you do it that I'm trying to see this particular species, or you want to explore a particular region and whatever happens while you're underwater happens? How do you sort of plan for your
For me, it's whatever happens. The species that I want to see, you go to a certain location, oh, this is found here, I'd like to see that. But it doesn't always happen. And as I said about seeing things differently, there's a place called Lewani on the east side, and there was a fish that I used to keep from there, which was a lovely yellow fish, and that's one I really wanted to see. I headed from the boat and went 20 meters north. Somebody else went 10 meters to the south of the boat, or a bit further. They saw the fish I wanted to see, and yet I saw the fish that they wanted to see going the opposite direction. So, and you can just be in the right place at the right time.
Yeah.
It's like the fish taking young into their mouth, the females taking young into their mouth. It was on my last dive on the first trip I took. I actually saw that. I went 19 dives without seeing it, and now I see it. Now I see it on almost every dive because I recognise the signs now. As before, because there was so much for me to see on the first trip. And it's underwater. The first time I was underwater, I was doing this with the camera. Oh, there's this, and I had to calm myself down and stay with things. And now I can often spend 5-6 minutes just in one position, just filming one fish, just watching what's going on. So really, when I dive, I don't dive far because I like mbuna. I'm often near the rocks anyway, or around the rocks. But I just like to stay in a position, film, and just watch the interaction, or watch feeding behaviour, breeding behaviour, and anything else. Whereas others will go along with the camera, they might take a photo, then turn, take another photo, swim along a bit further, and cover much more distance than I do. That's just my preference. I just prefer to film, because for me, I can then. It does annoy me at times when I come home and start editing the videos and looking at the videos, because I suddenly see a fish moving to the right. I'm trying to turn the screen, trying to get the. Why didn't you turn the camera? You missed that. But there's just so much going on. You can be concentrating on something, you just don't notice some of the other things going on around you.
So when you go down, have you got like a list of things you like to document? Some people that do similar to what you do, they analyze the entire ecosystem of a specific area, from the substrate, the organisms within the substrate, to the flora, fauna, everything. Is that something that you do, like a scientific approach, or do you just observe from a fish keeper's point of view?
Yeah, I do. The only bit like I do is I collect a sample of the substrate at the place.
Yeah, I've seen that on your Facebook.
Only because it interested me, because I went there with the preconception, as I said before, that it was sand everywhere. And when I got there, I thought, this isn't sand. And the difference in size of the gravel that's there, you can go from tiny little pieces up to chunks 5-6 centimeters across. And you can go some places where it's just rock, pebbles all the way down until you get to the open area where it then goes into silt or sand. So yeah, I collected that because it interested me, and then people were asking me about it because they want to recreate it in their aquarium. What's the best substrate for this? What should I do here? Have you got any ideas for that? So some people have done a really good job of it. They looked at things and come up with something which was very close to what I've seen, but that is only in that area. So if you move a few meters away, you could have something different again. And when around Chisholmulu, which is only a small island, the difference there is amazing. You know, a few kilometers, and you've got tiny grains of sand, big chunks of pebble and bits and pieces in there, and then it can go back to fine stuff again. So the same with the rocks. The rocks vary in different places. So,
do you collect anything or catch anything while you're there, or is it all just photography based?
only on camera, yeah, on film.
Yeah.
There are other guys who go out there. Danish guys who go out there. They collect their own fish.
Yeah.
They go out with the barrels and the nets, and go down and collect their own fish, and then then they get exported back to them once they've gone through the quarantine period back at Red Zebra Lodge.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what puts you off?
We could do it, but it doesn't interest me. And I think the leader, Larry, he says you take up your diving time when you want to go and see the fish. If you're doing that, you've got to spend some time there collecting them and bringing them up and then getting them back again. So.
Fair point.
Yeah, I guess for some people that would be an interest to do that, and it's not a time burden per se. That's part of their journey and their experience.
There are guys who ask if you can do that. I mean, like I said about Danish guys, there's one guy who went out. He only went out there once. He actually put a video up of him collecting an MCAT, an OB male. I think it was a metricline zebra. He actually caught it himself along with the females, and now he's got it back home in his aquarium. So,
yeah, wow, cool.
Because sometimes there are people out there who are of the opinion that there aren't any wild caught fish. They're lakeside bred and things like this, which is rubbish. The only lakeside bred fish in Malawi are the ones that are being bred for reintroduction, like I mentioned earlier, Chindongo, Solosai, and Melanochromis chipoki are two of the species which are endangered and have been bred for the Stuart M. Grant Conservation Fund to be released back, which is we've done. Which has been started in 2013 for Chindongo Solosai, and there've been, I think it's 5 releases now. The last release we did was a much bigger release back in 2017. Was 700 fish went back in. Some of them good size juveniles, but others were tiny fry. It was just what they had in the pond. I'm not sure if we're releasing this year or not. We're going back out in 2 weeks' time. No, we're going to Chisholm, so I don't know if we are releasing more again or if we're just going to do a count of the population to see how it's been, because 2017 was the last time that any were released there, and the visibility was so poor that day that we couldn't even do a count of the existing population before we released them. So we're hoping the population is getting better, but there have been exports. The problem being, although they're critically endangered, they're not protected. They're not in the national park, which will give them protection, and they've been given no legal protection. There was talk a few years ago about trying to get these endangered species protected internationally by getting them on the red list. But as far as I'm aware, nothing's happened with that at the moment. It may be going through because I was told it was a long process. But the frustrating thing is, I mentioned earlier about fish being released into the national park. If they'd released these into the national park, it wouldn't be a problem. They'd be surviving in the lake. Yeah. So there was an American photographer who was there recently, and he saw some there. Its population may be okay, but not good enough to support collecting on a large scale, which is probably what would happen if the population grew up enough. Because it seems to be that when we've done these releases, it's been publicised on Facebook with the video of the release and information, and our colleagues have done it on his website for the fund. It seems to be that when the fish get released and it gets publicised, that other exporters think, oh, there's more fish back there now, we can go and collect them, because it seems to be a few months after that an import or an export comes out and comes into Europe somewhere. So it's not illegal to catch them, it's not illegal to sell them, it's just a moral issue that people are donating money to the conservation fund to pay for the rearing of these fish and getting them released, and you're thinking, why do that for somebody else? And one of the exporters is rearing them at their facilities, so they're doing that work as well for another exporter to come along and just catch them. So although they're wild caught, they might not be wild raised fish that are being exported. So.
You'd almost think that, give it a few years, try and really push that population up and around and go from there. Just say that don't collect them. There's enough in the hobby as it is anyway. People that are dedicated to breeding them and trying to keep them and trying to swap bloodlines around. In the UK, that happens. There's a Facebook group for that species, and people say, "I've got some. Do you want to mix? Do you want to do this? To swap some over or whatever, just to try and mix it up."
That's one thing that is prolific in Malawi cichlid within the the Malawi community is fish breeding, because obviously it's, I wouldn't say it's easy to breed them, but it's people that keep them breed them.
Yeah, it's frustrating at times because it seems to me the ones I want to breed don't seem to want to do it or not prolific, whereas others just you get overrun. I'm overrun at the moment, I'm full up, but luckily I've got somebody who's taken a load off of me at the weekend, so I'd have a bit more space.
Yeah.
So what fish do you currently have yourself within your own aquariums? That's probably a nice little segue into what you've got.
Probably got, I'm trying to think how many I've got now. I've probably got 25 to 30 different, like some of those might be variants of different species, but I think I've got about 20 different species, so possibly more, or variants of those. Some are not colourful, but I just like the Bactochromines subrosus is one which is it's just a brown colour, and they've got the big lips sort of open out the front, but they feed in crevices. Juveniles are nice; they're more of an orangey colour. Another one I like. Often I don't like colourful fish. It's not that I don't like them; it's just some of the ones that appeal to me aren't so colourful. Another one is Cichlids species sand, which is more of a sort of an orangey and black barred fish. But sometimes they're not coloured up at all, and other times they do. And then you start to see more subtle colours. It's only when you take the photographs, you suddenly find there's a bit of blue in here, which you don't see with the naked eye. You see little bits and pieces. Then there's some of the more colourful ones are Metroclima parsonotus, which have an orange dorsal, blue black stripe with orange dorsal. Sonotilapia arwira, which is it's a powder blue Sonotilapia. It's still not certain if it's an undescribed species or is it a variant of another Sonotilapia species. It just gets exported under the name arwira, and they are powder blue. The male goes almost white when it goes into breeding mode. So,
do you keep species on any tanks or mixed species?
I keep mixed species, normally of ones that shouldn't, or have got far less chance of interbreeding, if you like. I try to just keep 3 or 4 in the species in the tank. When I first started out, obviously I was just like anybody does. I like this one, I like that one, just mixing. It's only learning later on that about compatibility and obviously adding new fish, adding one fish at a time, a male straight into a tank isn't a good idea. It's like new fish I quarantine. I always quarantine my fish for up to 3 months because of any pathogens they could bring in. Also allows them to acclimatise to my water parameters, my water change regime, feed in, and gives them a chance to build up, get a resistance or to regain their health from any import or journey.
How do you find water in your area? Because obviously being down in the south of England, it's a high limestone, I'd imagine. So the water should, in all accounts, be quite suitable for Malawi's.
It is, yeah. I think out the tap, I think pH value is something like 7.6, and I store it in a water butt and bubble it, so it goes up to 7.8, 7.9, something like that.
Right.
Yeah. Just try to bubble it for 24 hours just to get off any chlorine gas or anything out of it.
Yeah.
I say to the wife, there's chlorine in the water. She doesn't think there is, and I'm supposed to be one who can't smell or taste anything. But yeah, I'd much rather do that and be safe than just put tap water straight in and lose fish.
Yeah, no, absolutely. We have to use conditioners up north because our water is far more soft. I think it comes out as 6.2, 6.3 with something like 16 ppm.
Yeah.
If you're through an arrow filter, so it's really, really soft.
Yeah, I do know guys on the south though who run everything through an HMA and add buffers and stuff to theirs because that's what you want to do. And you do what you want to do. It's your choice,
Yeah, wow.
That's beauty of fishkeeping.
I've got no more sort of formal questions written down. But if there's anybody in the chat that has any questions far away, John might have something as well.
I've not got any questions, but I do want to highlight one of the people that are watching. I just had the question up there, but it didn't really fit to what we were talking about, but it was in relation to showing Malawi's in fish shows, at fish societies and things like that. Is that something that you've done in your? No, it's not something I've done personally either. But we've got Steve.
For me, when I mentioned earlier, I don't know if we were online at the time about taking the fish out of the tank, take a photograph of it.
Yeah, you did. Yeah.
About 10 minutes, I took that fish out. That made me think, why do I want to take a fish, put the fish all the stress going to do anything else with it? Not for me anyway.
Yeah,
we have a question come up. What is it about Lake Malawi that appeals to you as opposed to like Tanganyika or other lakes around the African regions?
As I said before, I think it was the colours. Saw these mbuna in a local fish shop, and I was just hooked on the colours of them. And then once I got them, then it's the attitude, the behaviour. I mean, I have kept like Tanganyika cichlids, a few of them, but I just prefer Malawi. So the mbuna especially. I've kept a few haps before, but only for a short time. Just tried it.
And do you have any tips on keeping plants with cichlids without them destroying them?
No, because I tried it just burying them in the sand with some ballast and they got pulled out. But somebody did ask me a question one time about using egg crate, perhaps feeding them through egg crate, and so the roots then, but the egg crate just off the bottom so the roots could spread out. That may be, a way to do it. Like getting the plant through, and then once they're established, perhaps establish them in another tank first, and then put it in once those roots are grown a bit. Perhaps that may do it. They might still get ripped apart. I don't know. But
an underground filter system would possibly be something similar. Would work along that principle as well.
Probably, yeah.
Roots underneath it, and valid point. And we've got another one here. What sort of cichlids would you recommend people looking at for beginners?
That's a hard one because I think that's another thing we spoke about before coming on air about. I could recommend what I think will work, but just because it's worked for me or worked for somebody else, it doesn't mean it's going to work for you. I think the best thing you can do is to choose the fish you want and then ask people of experience, what's compatibility like, what's your experience with these? Because you have people that are told some of these beginner fish, and they were the fish that I've had the worst problems with. Hydrotrophus sprengari, the rusty cichlids. They're supposed to be, they were recommended as beginner cichlid, but for me they were aggressive, and the same with yellow labs, Labradochromos ceruleus. They were quite aggressive as well. So, but they were big when I got them, so I don't know if there was something else mixed in with them because that was a few years ago. So it could have been they were hybrid anyway, and something else was in with those. But yeah, it's a hard one. But obviously, what thing you could do is pick 3 separate genera, and then pick a species from Metroclima, Cynotilapia, and something else, Labiatrophius, something like that. Something from there, and then ask people about those. What's the best ones to have compatibility-wise?
Fickle.
I wouldn't want to say to somebody, you should get this or you get that, because you know what you want. You choose the fish that appeal to you. Just because they appeal to me doesn't mean they'll appeal to you. So what you want is a tank that you want to look at, whether you've got pink gravel in it and castles, or whether you try and do a natural scape. It's your choice. You're the one who's looking at it. You're the one maintaining it. You've got to be happy with it.
Exactly. What's your opinion on catfish in a Malawi setup?
I've got catfish in mind, but they're Malawi catfish. Subodontus and Nyasa. But yeah, I know people try different ones in there. They sometimes put the Tanganyikan one in there, multipunctatus in there, and they have some of the smaller ones. A couple of smaller catfish as well. Again, it's up to them. If it's one of those awkward ones, because over time some fish will become accustomed to different water parameters. If they're captive bred fish, over generation, they're going to become more accustomed to the water parameters. So yes, they could work. But if you're talking about wild fish or first generation fish, then you might be a lot more careful with what you put in there. But what you want to put in there is something which isn't going to get attacked by the other cichlids. So it's got to be something that's a bit robust or whatever. But, yeah, because I've seen stories of people putting things in and they disappear or get attacked. Yeah. For me, it's Synodontus niacin, a little catfish. It's native to Malawi anyway.
Yep. Have you seen large Venustus in large groups, or are they solitary fish?
They're solitary. The thing is with the large haps as well, often you don't see males coloured up. You'll see females, immature males, and they tend to keep their distance. If you do see one, they don't seem very approachable. And yeah, they usually are solitary.
Yep.
But say immature males and females seem much more approachable.
Yeah. Interesting.
What's the strangest thing you've seen?
Yeah.
When you've been down there? Now I noticed a picture on your Facebook of the Malawi sponge.
Oh yeah. That's a bit. It is a bit strange because I thought it was going to be quite soft, and I actually touched it by hand. It's quite hard. It was not prickly, but quite solid to touch. Those things can squeeze themselves into little gaps in the rock. The one on my Facebook page, I think, was the round one.
That's right, yeah.
Yeah, they also get into little crevices. You can have triangular shapes and little things. There's a guy in Denmark who did import them, but he said they were very hard to keep alive in the aquarium. Somebody did tell me years ago they release toxins. I don't know if that's true or not.
Well, if they're anything like the marine,
anything weird or unusual. No. I mean, some you get some bites every now and again when you're looking into somewhere, and out comes a catfish straight at you or something like that. But no, I wouldn't say it's weird, but it's a bit scary when you're there and all of a sudden this thing's coming out, and it seems you see it, and it's straight back in the rocks again.
Yeah. So, other than fish and sponges and catfish, obviously, you've mentioned that you've seen a crab. Has there any other crustaceans or shellfish? Any other, like crustaceans?
I don't think so. I think that's the only crustacean. I'm not sure on that. I think that's the only crustacean. But there's eels a couple of eels in there as well. Might be more than two eels that are exported for the trade. Which one is a rosette, which is got little orangey circles on its or marks on its flanks.
Right.
A friend of mine has got some of those, and he's been lucky enough to witness the breeding recently. It was only last year people claimed to have bred them for the first time, but they only found them after finding young in their tanks. He actually witnessed the breeding and videoed it all of them breeding. He left them to it because it was their first time, but they didn't hatch out. But yeah,
that's promising, though.
I thought it was really good that he'd done it because he was determined to do it. I think he spent about 2 years getting the setup right to be able to do it. So,
yeah,
please, he got that far.
More than when that happens.
Awesome.
What about snails and stuff like that?
Yeah, the snails there's actually a species of mbuna which the females go into as empty snail shells to when they're holding or to keep young in there. Lanisticola. So they're called. So it's Lanistis is the type of shell, and the species is Metroclima lanisticola. So
right.
I've actually got them and bought some shells back, and they don't really use them in the tank.
Typical.
But they definitely use them in the wild because I've seen them in the wild going into shells. Yes.
Are they quite big shells or small fish or
small fish? They're small fish.
Small
The
fish,
shell opening is about 2 to 3 centimeters across, and the small female can get in. In captivity, they grow bigger though, so that may be why they're not interested in captivity because they do seem to get bigger. Like most Malawi cichlids do, they definitely get much bigger in captivity than they do in the lake.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I think that might bring us to the end.
Probably those photos that didn't work so well, but
yeah, that's all right. I'd like to sort of close off our talks with our guests with a set of really quick yes or no essential questions. So this might be the trickiest questions you've got to ask for the rest of the day. So we'll see how we go. Are you a tea or a coffee drinker?
Coffee.
Coffee. Chocolate or vanilla?
Chocolate.
Okay. If you had one superpower, what would it be?
Mind reading.
Very cool. Heads or tails?
Heads.
Heads. Okay. Do you think we're alone in the universe?
No.
No. Cool. Okay.
And we
And the last one
might
is
be alone on this planet. There might be
yeah.
alien life for me, but microscopic or something like that. So.
What is your unicorn fish? And this can either be with you diving and seeing it and photographing it or videoing it, or to keep in your aquarium. I'll leave that one up to you, which way you choose for that.
What fish would I really love in my tank is basically what you're asking.
Yeah.
There are some fish I want to see. I've seen briefly in the lake. I wouldn't keep them in the tank because they wouldn't fit. They're a mormarid which comes out at night and goes after cichlids trying to eat them. I think they call them dolphin fish. I can't remember the exact name of them, but yeah, they're a night hunter. I've seen them in the daytime hiding in rocks. They're probably about 3 to 4 foot long, long, thin, pointed snout. I just like to see them properly and get a photo or video of those. Yeah,
I think I've seen a Malawi documentary that had a bit of a segment on them.
Yeah,
very impressive.
Yeah.
Cool. Oh, that's what we've got. So thank you very much. It's greatly appreciated. I appreciate you giving up your time at this time of the night. So
thanks for asking me.
It's been great. Thank you very much. Okay. Thank you everybody for joining us. I hope you've enjoyed it. We've clearly enjoyed this chat. So yeah, it's really appreciated. So thank you. So have a good one, team. Happy fish keeping, and catch you later.
Take care.
Thank you.